The Solomon Islands have slowly begun to pick up in the tourist market. From beach excursions and historical artifacts to underwater marvels, here are a few things one can come across on these South Pacific islands.
Hey guys, it's Eric from American Eye, and I'm today's guest host on Talltanic. More on that later, but for now, let's get on to that video.
Number 19. Cavachi Volcano. When Cavachi isn't in the middle of erupting, you probably wouldn't think of it much as it being a submarine volcano. The real spectacle comes when Cavachi erupts and has been known to eject molten lava upwards at 70 meters above sea level. Locally, it's known as Cavachi's Oven, and is considered to be one of the most active volcanoes in the southwest region of the Pacific Ocean. Its first recorded eruption was in 1939 and has formed islands before, only for them to be submerged back into the sea. Number 18. Tanaru Falls. A little exploring through the rainforest of Guadalcanal will bring you to Tanaru Falls. These scenic waterfalls stand at 60 meters high or 200 feet high and cascade down into the Chea River below. The falls are an amazing spot for tourists to visit, although you might want to get a four-wheel drive vehicle to see it. This is because the roads can be a little bit rough. However, there is a point where you must hike to get all the way up to the waterfall, and apparently it gets pretty muddy. But the view certainly seems worth it. Number 17. Honiara Botanical Gardens. If you couldn't have guessed, the Solomon Islands are an ideal place for people who love nature and the outdoors. The Honiara Botanical Gardens, or Rove Botanical Gardens, aren't the super upkept kind of grounds you're used to seeing in a botanical garden. There aren't elaborate designs here or new plants introduced to the area for the sake of aesthetic. The gardens have been more or less described as an ordered jungle. The gardens are located on hills that overlook the city of Rove and is a great place if you're looking for some plants and a nice walk. Number 16. Cultural dance performances. A big part of traveling to a new place is to learn and appreciate the culture of that region. While you could very much spend most of your time on the Solomon Islands just exploring, it's good to note that there's also a culture there you can immerse yourself into. And part of doing that has to do with the popular cultural dance performances the people on the islands have to offer. These dances are performed during special ceremonies traditionally, although certain resorts do have some shows you can watch on the regular. Number 15. Vilu War Museum. Honiara houses the Vilu War Museum, a facility that exhibits the island's history regarding World War II. Though tourism here is usually reserved to diving and resorts, there's more to be found than just sunbathing. At the Vilu Museum, different artifacts ranging from old aircraft to cannons and monuments can be found here. The collection was put together in the 1960s to the 1970s, though the history of establishing the museum was rocky. It can apparently be found within a forest not too far away from the main road. Number 14. Maravo Lagoon. Maravo Lagoon is one of the biggest saltwater lagoons in the world, and it can be found in the New Georgia Islands. It measures in at over 700 square kilometers. Who uses kilometers? Come on. A barrier reef system surrounds the lagoon, and it's a popular place to spot the Indo-Pacific bottlenose dolphins in the waters. These marine animals features draw in a lot of people, and Maravo has proved to be a prime spot for diving. It may certainly be on its way to a World Heritage Site and has accommodation for visitors, including eco-lodges, than other parts of other islands. Number 13. Feeding freshwater eels. While that doesn't seem like most people's ideal way to spend their trip, feeding freshwater eels in the Solomon Islands, Beach Village, is a traditional activity in the region. At the Wilderness Lodge at Gatoke Island, you'll be able to witness one of the most rich and incredibly diverse ecosystems in the world. On a cultural tour of Beach Village, you'll get to learn about their famously tame eels that locals feed by leaving fish by the rocks of the stream shore and watching as the eels come up and snatch their offerings. Number 12. Bonegi 1 and 2. Snorkeling is a beloved pastime on the Solomon Islands, and some of the best places for a snorkeler to go are Bonegi 1 and Bonegi 2 at Guadalcanal Island. One of the main reasons being there are loads of old ships and craft that have been submerged underwater for decades now, and these ruins have been a drawing point for curious divers from all over the world. The old rusty structure of the Kinugawa Maru can be found just below the surface of the beach and reaches as far as 27 meters. In addition, it's also a nice place for a picnic after you've used some underwater history. Number 11. Leatherback turtles. One of the many animals that call the Solomon Islands home are the leatherback turtles, which unfortunately have reached the status of becoming an endangered species. Measures have been taken to help preserve this species, starting with the hatching of baby leatherback turtles on the shores of the beach in the area. If people go during the right time, they'll be able to watch these little guys make their way out of the eggshells and venture into growing up as they reach the crystal blue waters. Number 10. Lake Tagano. On the island of Rennell is a location of the majestic Lake Tagano, which also happens to be the largest lake in the insular Pacific. It's so revered that it's been listed as a World Heritage Site and is near the world's second largest raised coral atoll. Also sometimes referred to by locals as Big Water Lake Tagano, it measures in at 29 kilometers or 18 miles in length, and it's also about 10 kilometers or 6.2 miles wide. The lake's depth reaches meters of 44, the water's depth reaches to 44 meters or 144 feet deep, and is composed of both brackish freshwater as well as saltwater. It's said that there's also old Japanese aircraft that can be found at the bottom of the lake. Number 9. Fat Boys Resort. Although major tourism is still in the works at the Solomon Islands, one of the top resorts to visit is apparently a place called Fat Boys Resort. The name derives from a book called The Pickwick Papers, which was written by Charles Dickens. The name Fat Boy is in reference to a character named Joe, whose lifestyle is all about sleeping, eating, and drinking, so pretty much just being as lazy and leisurely as possible. On a daily basis, it's a pretty sluggish way to be, but on vacation in some tropical islands, you've got to admit it sounds pretty nice. Number 8. Honiara Central Market. The Solomon Islands are also known for their colorful markets, one of the major ones being the Honiara Central Market. The Central Market sells you all the things you would expect out of a market situated in a city by the shore. There's an abundance of fruits and vegetables, fish, flowers, arts and crafts made by locals, and all kinds of amazing things. It was established during the 1950s and is a thriving environment to this day. And it's a perfect place for visitors since it also sells some of the cheapest foods in the area. Lots of the locals from the different regions gather here to sell their wares, which makes for a very diverse collection of things to find here. Number 7. Mushroom Islands. The appropriately named Mushroom Island is apparently another great diving spot located at the Solomon Islands. The island is also known as Tambatuni, though referred to as Mushroom Island for its unique shape. It's also the location of a very interesting wall dive, which there's supposed to be a lot of interesting life forms to see along the submerged wall where there's lots of fish, lack of sharks, and beautiful coral for you to check out with your underwater goggles. Number 6. Shark Point. A few places in the world have their own Shark Point. At the Solomon Islands, the name shouldn't scare you too much, as there's a huge variety of animals to marvel at located in this popular diving site. Shark Point can be found in Munda in the Western Province. Schools of fish make the area their home, and is also home to lots of branching coral, whip coral, and bushy coral near Munda Bar. At its depth, it reaches 27 meters. So interesting. Number 5. Tetepari Island. Eco-tourists gather on to Tetepari Island since it's the site of a huge rainforest that's been carefully conserved. On the island, you'll find eco-friendly lodging that features solar power energy. What's interesting is that it's an uninhabited island for the most part, which in turn helps the wildlife stay undisturbed. It's the largest uninhabited island in the South Pacific and measures at 118 square kilometers or 46 square miles in area. New species are being discovered here all the time, and birdwatching is a popular activity for visitors since there are 230 species of birds to be found here. Number 4. Leroux Cut. Leroux Cut is one of the most famous, if not the most famous diving site located in the waters of the Solomon Islands, and the place is rife with diving spots. This deep passage is between two pieces of submerged land that's wide enough for scuba divers to swim into, though there's not much room for lots of people to be down there at one time. As far as wildlife goes, there's not a lot to be found here within the cut, but then again, that isn't the point. The point is swimming between this extremely narrow passage that during the day, sunlight seeps through. Number 3. Mount Reno. We've talked about loads of diving and going deep into the sea, but what about the heights? A popular walking track is found at Mount Reno, which is situated on Kalobangara Island. One of the most famous features of this mountain is the scenic mists that surround the higher parts of the region, and it's really like you're on top of the clouds. In addition to the amazing views, there's of course lots of wildlife to be found on the mountain that have been described by hikers as a peaceful kind of wilderness. Number 2. World Discoverer. The MS World Discoverer is a huge abandoned cruise ship that's been floating in the waters of the Solomon Islands since the year 2000. This was once a sea vessel that traveled the world, but then came into contact with a reef, which would put the World Discoverer out of commission. Everyone who was on board was safely evacuated, so the history behind its sinking isn't a dark one. For years now, it's just been left to slowly fade away into the waters, and its presence is that more of a strange and random reputation, if anything. Number 1. Skull Island. Now we get to something that's actually a little more eerie. Skull Island is certainly a title that sounds fictional, but it's a real place in the Solomon Islands. Who knew? Though a small island for the very few who visit it, it's been described as a neat place to check out, even if you would think there'd be scary stories than that. This island in New Georgia is named Skull Island since it houses the remains of prominent chiefs and their history within shrines. Tourists are allowed to visit the island, and you must be accompanied by a chief who's ready to guide you through the sacred land.
Hey, if you liked that video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you like me, maybe you can check out a video over on American Eye, right over here. Thanks, I'll see you later.